to everyone. Buongiorno a tutti. Welcome to this really nice space in the Biennale with all these books. I think it's a really nice space to talk about the common ground and about we think that could be considered as the space of the city where the common ground is overexposed, public spaces. Let me begin thanking, I would like to thank to the institutions that they have made possible this really interesting event. Of course, the Biennale, which is hosting this conference. I would like to thank CCCB, Center for Contemporary Culture in Barcelona. They are sending our speaker, I will introduce him later, and also the institutions supporting this prize in Europe. Of course, I would like to thank to VIU, the Venice International University, for having accepted this petition and for organizing this event in this really interesting place. And finally, I would like to thank the UF, University in Venice, for providing with some professors that they are in our zero row, and they are invited to suggest some points after the conference. I would like to thank very much the students from the VIU and the students from UF, because we expect from them really punchy questions at the end of the conference, and I think that thinking about public spaces ahead, this means thinking about young people when they think about public space. We have this zero row, we have these special professors invited to participate in the debate. We have Luca Pes, we have Erika Sherman, we have Francesca Gelli, we have Enrica Anguillari, we have Ruben Bayocco, and myself. I'm going to be here. I'm in the zero row simultaneously in some way. These professors, they are coming from different fields. Some of them, they work with social activists in public space. Others, they are coming from the field of the people planning the city, so deciding, dealing with decision-making of what is physically happening in city space, dealing with architecture and urbanism and urban design. Other professors, they are coming from the field of the public policies, so those ideas ruling what can be allowed to be happening in the city, regulating behaviors, regulating economic activities, and so on and so forth. And also, some professors, they are coming from art and architecture and the cultural perspective on public spaces. Even the landscape approach is going to be represented, so we think that this group of professors, they could add a lot of ideas to David Bravo presentation. David Bravo is here with me. He's going to be our speaker today. He has been the secretary of the European Prize for Urban Public Space for years. This is a prize that 5 important institutions in Europe, they give every 2 years to the best public spaces produced in Europe. David is going to explain very well and better than me the prize, but let me just say, to finish my presentation, that the interesting thing about this prize, and this point makes this prize, I think, very interesting for all of us, is this. This is not a prize on architecture only. This is not a prize on urban design only. This is a prize trying to underline which is making public spaces being public. I think that I'm right. So this is the question. What is making public spaces being public today? Not in the 19th century, not in the 1950s, just today and in the future. In other words, what is making the common ground being alive in cities? I think that this is a big question, and that's why we have David Bravo with us. He's an architect, and he's dealing with the prize, and he has prepared a very interesting presentation on the last projects which has been awarded with the prize. In this diversity of projects, you are going to see very canonic and academic views from architecture, so very well done projects from the point of view of urban design, and also projects that are dealing with people activating public spaces with no design at all. This is what makes really interesting, in my opinion, this prize for students coming from different materials. We have students in here coming from Venetian history, students coming from the field of global tourism and new technologies, students coming from the field of urban planning and urban design. So I think that it's going to be a really exciting session, and I would like to thank again all the institutions, all the professors, all the students, and especially our speaker, David Brown. David, thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesc. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm so glad to be here in Venice. I must tell you that it's not easy to come to a city like this one with some lessons about public space and city, because it's a so marvelous city that I don't think if the works I'm going to explain to you will shine as your city. Anyway, I would like to present you the prize. This is a prize with already 12 years of history. We have just had the 7th edition of the prize. And as Francesc was telling us, it's not an architectural prize, but a prize that throws a kind of vision of city as a multidisciplinary thing with different approaches. And I think that the 6 projects I'm going to show you today are a good proof of that. But they are not the only ones we show in our website. You can find more than 300 works that have been submitted to the prize in these 12 years. So I really encourage you to go into the website and take a look at them. I was telling you that the prize is not only concerned of shape, of architecture, of design, and this is something that at its beginning, in the year 2000, was quite hard. It was a moment in which architecture was very concerned by iconic buildings, by the star system, and we proposed this different kind of approach to the matter of city. In these moments today, we are living a big change, which are represented by a big question mark. So now, with our background and the new time we are living, our point of view, I think that it's getting rushed. Okay. But before explaining, before showing you these 6 projects that have been that have won or have been mentioned in this last edition, I would like to present you this kind of approach that the prize does. And to do so, I would like to start from the title of this Biennale of this year, Common Ground. And I have asked to transform it a little bit as common background. Why? This is because city is not only a common ground, a shared space on which we are coexisting today. It is also a shared experience, thus a common background that belongs to time and that explains us where we come from and where are we going to. So it's not only a matter of shape and form. It's not a matter of architectural or informal shape as a physical container, but it is also a common sense, a shared meaning. And I am going to defend this idea by making a kind of comparison between 2 ideas. One is city and the other one is culture, which these 2 ideas, by means of the notion of cultivation, become inseparable items. So let me begin with a quite strange starting point, because city and culture, I said, they are inseparable, and yet culture is older than city. It is even older than humanity or mankind. So that's the strange starting point. We're going to tropical Africa to look at some chimpanzees. When the chimpanzees from one end of tropical Africa break shells with sticks, while even belonging to the same species, the ones in the opposite end of Africa break them with stones, we are facing a distinction between two different cultural traditions. Moreover, we are in front of a good summary of the meaning of culture. Going beyond the instinctive behavior imposed by their own genes, the apes in each one of these two regions have learned something, and they have managed to share it with the other members of the group. And culture is nothing else but a transmission of technique. Here, technique must be understood in an open way as the art of dealing with things. By means of culture, different techniques, different skills of dealing with the world are transferred. They are shared. Sharing is an intrinsic condition to culture. Whether it takes place among contemporary peers or between consecutive generations. When a technique is secret, when it is not shared with others, it might be called technology, but it certainly is not culture. Okay? And in the urban context, sharing occurs as in nowhere else. From the moment in which mankind stops wandering, hunting and collecting to cultivate the land, city appears necessarily as a cultural product. And since that moment, and on an accelerated basis, the techniques of cultural heritage have become increasingly complex and numerous, variable and varied. Cultivation, thus, not only originates the city, but also gives name and body to culture. Once humanity has stopped moving, she's forced to change her way of getting orientated, of giving sense to existence to avoid getting lost. She does so by operating in two opposite ways with time and space. The first one, the second one, space, of overwhelming extension, is put under interaction, under interaction operations that break it down and cut it off. Okay. The second one, time, is desperately short, so it undergoes elongation and continuity. We're gonna see examples of that right now. These two ways of operating have many consequences for culture and city that explain, in fact, the catalytic effect that city has on culture. So, from From a special point of view, cultivation led the Neolithic revolutionaries to settle in fixed places, to organize land uses and mark boundaries on a land that until then did not belong to them. They got used to see any morning the same hill and the same river, and they designated them with new names that became guiding landmarks. Their worldview radically split between the harmonic order of urban domain and the chaotic uncertainty of external nature. Land management required many complex agreements, this is important, complex agreements, to establish areas in the arable land, to erect protective fencing, to safeguard crops in storage buildings, or to release the interstices for circulation. For thousands of years, culture and city have fed on such space interruption operations. But these complex agreements required by cultivation went far beyond from agricultural geometry. The demographic explosion caused by production surpluses brought labor specialization and free time, which made possible the emergence of such important phenomena as market, writing, or science. They brought also the emergence of social classes and a substantial increase in the degree of complexity of politics, which are nothing else than the technique of coexistence management. Concerning time, growers were forced to give it continuity by recognizing seasonal cycles that set the tempo of their crops and allowed them to make predictions, to anticipate the future, and to develop projects beyond their own existence. But they also were strongly called to become aware of the past. In the new urban order, the dead were no more left behind as in the days of nomad wandering. They remained buried beside the living ones in near locations where it was easy to honor them and remember them. Their fields, their barns, their homes or temples, the remains of all the techniques they had learned during their life transcended them. They were available to their successors as a precious legacy that allowed them to continue learning skills and techniques from an advanced point without having to start from the scratch, to start from zero. That was so important for culture and for learning. So, on the one hand, we have the juxtaposed diversity as a result of space disruption, and on the other hand, we have the overlying accumulation freed of temporal continuation. These two facts makes city the best catalyst for culture. The first one promotes serendipity. Serendipity is the possibility of bumping with valuable finds in a promiscuous frame of mixture and diversity. The second one, the overlying accumulation, produces what we call palimpsest, the need to write or build where others have already done so, and therefore to synchronize the urgencies of the present with the impositions of the past. Palimpsest and serendipity, memory and promiscuity, are complementary forces that drive and empower learning. The first one, palimpsest, contradicts the principle of originality and shows us that there is no possibility to innovate, not even to acknowledge novelty, when one is not able of harboring memories. It shows us also that any innovation is the continuation of an existing tradition, and that all memory is necessarily creative. The second one, serendipity, combines the need for individual identity with certain rejection of the idea of private property. So that leads us to the paradox of property. Indeed, to enable exchange, there must be, we must have some diversity. There is no need of exchange when everything is the same. So there must be some diversity, but at the same time, a certain degree of porosity that break ceilings. No? We must break the boundaries of things to make them exchange with other things. In this sense, both city and culture get richer when they manage to undo the paradox of property, which opposes identity to universality. And that's something that we see every day in our streets, as we will see later. On one hand, individual properties generate idiosyncrasies without which diversity would be impossible. On the other hand, they produce inbreeding of secrecy, avoiding the chance to share and transfer wealth. Here it's interesting to refer to the etymology of idiosyncrasy, which comes from the same root as idiot. This idios means from one, and in the ancient Greece, the idiot was the opposite to the citizen, was the one that didn't care for common things and only cared for his own things. Thus, in the sphere of culture and in the one of city, there is something that is always needed to break this paradox of property. And this something which is needed is what we call public space. Public space is nothing else but the acceptation of a lower or stronger force of the collective, the collective interest over the individual will. In any system based on sharing, as culture or city are, this acceptance is absolutely unavoidable. Imagine, for example, a city without streets, where everything was private. It's impossible, you couldn't move. It's as impossible as a culture without transmission channels, such as language or mathematics, which carry the ideas and works of every single one of its intellectual owners. Public space is not only the backbone of private, it's also what makes it possible. Without public space, we couldn't have private property. That's why it's so important that common interest prevail over intellectual or land property, while, of course, enabling them. In this sense, the term free culture is so obvious or redundant, if you want, as a term as it would be public street, which in English doesn't exist, but in Spanish we used to say it as via pública. I don't know if in Italian it also exists. Such redundancies can only be explained as a response to our propensity, our trend, despite our status of social animals, our trend to abuse of power. This tendency, abuse of power, is as old as society, and it operates in two ways that are against the principles of sharing and transmission. As an opposite of sharing, it concentrates wealth, knowledge, or power by extracting benefits from social organization and by excluding minorities or migrants or women or youth of the right to participate in it. Against transmission, it opposes a conservative curve to any update of the past. It slows down any update of the past, while undermining the legacy that we have for the generations to come. It does so by trading resources that should belong to them, to these new generations, by damaging the environment, for example, or by transferring them our debt. So the only way to dilute abuse of power known so far is called democracy, and its continent, the continent of democracy, is none other than public space, precisely. That's the main place where sharing and transmission take place, and it's also the place that makes culture and city be inseparable matters that contain one to each other. City is a cultural product, and culture is a largely urban phenomenon. But besides that, both are based on this notion of public space. This common ground and also this common background, so, is the backbone of individual ownership that distributes this wealth and propagating it in space and in time. On the one hand, public space distributes wealth in the space when it gets to be versatile, redistributive, and universally accessible, serving as a catalyst of mixture and exchange, where the dialectic of reason is stronger than the imposition by force or by faith. On the other hand, public space expands wealth in time when it preserves memory from the past and when it gets to transmit our best legacy to the ones to come. It is the domain of public space where city and culture are best taken as the idea of cultivation. Where if we think at cultivation, the fruits that have been collected in the past provide the seeds that will bear fruits in the future. And that's a good idea that works in the domain of culture and in the domain of city. In this sense, city and culture can never be taken as definitive. They can never pretend to be finished, to be finished shapes. Okay, they must constantly take over, and they have always to remain open to be continuated or discussed. Surprisingly, despite the fertile variability that has characterized culture and city throughout their long history, these basic principles we have seen now remain today as valid as in the Neolithic times. And in the 6 prize-winning works that I'm going to explain to you, and that come from the 7th edition of the European Prize for Urban Public Space, these 6 projects are a proof of that, of this continuity of these principles. So I'm going to show you the works, the projects, in 3 couples. Okay? The first couple is London and Ljubljana. I'm going to pass over these projects. I'm not going to explain them in detail, but you can see them in the website and you can read about them when you want. Both in London, in the exhibition row, and in the refurbishment of the Ljubljana bank rivers, culture literally plays the role of backbone. These are 2 good examples of this role. In the first case, here we have the exhibition row. The refurbished street hosts many cultural and educational facilities of great importance, such as Victoria and Albert Museum, the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, and the Imperial College of London. The value of this work lies in dissolving the chaotic traffic tyranny by finding a complex consensus, a complex agreement between cars and pedestrians. that now are living in a low-speed shared surface. So we don't have here a case of, we have here an example of how to break speciality and to go to search for versatility. Okay. In the second case, the tyrannical hegemony of the car along the river banks was seriously damaging the dream of Joost Plečnik. In the 30s of the 20th century, this Slovenian architect accompanied the watercourse with a profuse and varied collection of buildings, plazas, canals, docks, and riverside parks, giving the river a cultivated and gentle monumentality with which he wanted to turn Ljubljana into a new Athens, a city, a modelic city, and an illustrated city also. This time, the refurbishment that has taken place was to combine a series of targeted interventions and to articulate them in a huge and powerful urban system. So we had a big amount of little interventions that work all together to have this effect. So both here in London, in Ljubljana and in London, the penalization of car in favor of the creation of pedestrian spaces and meeting places, for example, represents a victory on specificity by the improvement of versatility and promiscuity, as well as a benefit of the general interest over private car. Let's pass to the second example. Sorry. The second couple is formed by Nantes in France and Barcelona. In these two cases, the one in Nantes, which is the slavery abolition memorial, and the one in Barcelona, which is the arrangement of the tops of a hill, which is called Turó de la Rovira. Here we can find, in these two cases, we can find clear evidences of the weight that history continues to have today in our cities. That's a little stupid to say here in Venice, but there are many cities that have forgot their past. And these two examples also show the benefits that the exercise of memory reports to the cities. The French city, Nantes, has reconciled with its own dark past connected to slavery commerce by enabling a slavery museum in one of its river docks. Here we can see the previous state on the left side, the previous state of the intervention, where we see the dock of the river, which was used as an open-air parking, and we can also see a triangulated structure that supports it. the museistic space that has been placed inside this triangulated structure, it has a shape that recalls the hull of a slave ship, which we have at the right hand. And this is the kind of space that the memorial has inside of this triangular structure. So this coincidence between the slave ship hull and the memorial, this significant coincidence of shapes, combines the serendipity and the palimpsest which we have talked about before. As serendipity, it works as an objet trouvé, as a ready-made that uses a pre-existing form to change its sense. And according to palimpsest, it's using an overlapping of uses, as we will see now, that come from past and that are synchronized with the needs of present. And this kind of synchronization between past and present is evidenced by the transforming of the upper side, the cover of the memorial, which was an open air parking, as I said, and now it's a riverside walk. But perhaps Barcelona is the case where the idea of palimpsest is manifested in a more emphatic way. Here, in the Rovira Hill, it was a very, very special place. I used to visit it before the intervention, but it was not very known in Barcelona. I guess Francesc must have known it before also. It was an abandoned and virtually unknown place, despite its formidable sites on the city, 360-degree sites over the city. It's the tallest hill in the city fabric, in the urban fabric, so it had marvelous sites. And here at the top, there was the overlapping. There was an overlapping between the foundation of some Spanish Civil War anti-aerial batteries with the remains of an informal village of barracks, of shacks that subsequently colonized them. So we had two different moments of the history of Barcelona that were overlapping. After receiving the attentive treatment that an archaeologist would have given to them, epic memory of war and prosaic memory of those who were dispossessed of the right of having a home impregnate a viewpoint that is now accessible to everyone. Finally, the third couple is composed by the art installation Elsewhere in Malmö, Sweden, and by the famous camping protest in Madrid's Puerta del Sol, that are clear examples of the effort to improve the legacy that we have to the future generations. In Sweden, the substitution of commercial advertising by an artistic movie that gives a poetic sense to the action of waiting makes that, as a result, it discourages travelers from, for example, wasteful consumption, and it encourages them to use public transport. That has benefits of such a large scale for the city, as for example, and as of course, and for our successors, as it decreases our waste, it reduces our gas emissions, and it fights urban sprawl caused by the massive use of private vehicles. Finally, the spontaneous protest in Madrid on May 15th is one of many other Occupy movement demonstrations that show the political content of public space, and which is something that not always is shown. This political content has been throughout history the only way to win the rights that we enjoy today. So the rights of the future generation are being gained now in the street. As democracy has never fallen top down spontaneously. It has always been something that was gained. In a time where abuse of power is manifested through threats as persistent as the commodification of culture, the mercantilization of culture, or the privatization of public, it is urgent to defend this democratical idea of public space and to remember that it remains as necessary as ever. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, David. Well, it was a fascinating conference. We were talking at the beginning about how peculiar and how interesting this prize is. We have seen at the end all these different projects. I mean, we're talking about a prize, an European prize, awarding people demonstrating against the government in the streets, which is at some point quite far away from the idea of the urban design as a discipline, which is also at the same time awarded by a different prize in the same suggestion. So I wanted to remark very briefly, because we have begun later, and I would like to avoid being the whole day here. Just suggesting or underlining some main ideas in a very brief way. David Bravo was suggesting the idea of the complex agreement that is present on public space. So the public spaces in the city as the places, the main arenas for this complex agreement that for sure makes city going ahead, and maybe the idea of progress can be also suggested through this idea of complex agreement. He was also talking about this link, really strong link between the urban and the culture, and I would say at this point that this prize is organized by 4 institutes of architecture in Europe: London, Rotterdam, Paris, and Stockholm, and 1 center for contemporary culture in Barcelona. So we have this link from taking into consideration architecture and culture, and Helsinki and Vienna. a lot of them. So the idea of culture and the city and the urban fabric is really present in here. David also said, or discussed the idea of public space as the tension in between exchange and property, and this was really fascinating. He was saying that without diversity, no exchange is possible. So you need urban diversity to validate public spaces as the arena for exchanges. And also, let me finish with this, he was saying that he was showing these fascinating paradoxes, the paradox of the property. He literally said that without public space we cannot have private spaces. So he was concluding in some way that the real background, the real common background of a city is just public space. So I found really interesting all these comments, and now is the time for us, for professors and students to discuss with David about these evidences of evolution of public spaces today. So I would like to begin with our guest professors in the zero row. I'd like to invite them to suggest some points in a really, I would say, brief 5 minutes maximum presentation, asking them for a question or a comment. I would give the word to all of them, and then I will give the word to David to suggest a comment on all their points. And afterwards, I will give the word to the students, because I know that some of them, I hope a lot of them, will have interesting questions for David. So let me begin with Luca Pes. He has been really inspiring for deciding and making possible this event. He is coming from the field of history, urban history. So Luca, I give you the word. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. It was a very interesting lecture, and also the projects are very interesting, and the value, I think, of these prizes to encourage projects which promote public space, which is so important. As you said, it's basically the basis of democracy as well. It's difficult to imagine democracy without public space. And I've been trying to think how to define public space. I'm not a specialist, as you know, but and I find 3 points which help me understand what public space is. One is accessibility to everyone, which is a phrase which you actually used in describing the projects. The second one is the function this space has, which should be a collective function. And the third is free. That public space should be free. And my question is, living in Venice and seeing the case of Venice, but also the case of other areas in Italy, at what point in history are we? I mean, having said that in cities, I mean, it's impossible to have private property without public space, and that all cities since the urban revolution are characterized by both. Are we moving towards an age of less public space or of more public space? Because my impression is that public space is shrinking.
Thanks very much, Luca. Luca Pes is professor in the VIU, and he also teaches in other programs in Venice and in Italy as well. Let me give the word now to Erika Sherman, please.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. And I've been thinking, as I was listening, about the creation of meaning. And you kind of addressed this at the beginning, where you were talking about urban space as a cultural product, and the fact that human activity is a background for the creation of architecture, in a sense. But also, urban space cultivates culture, in the sense that architecture is a background also for human activity. And I'm interested in the construction of meaning surrounding public spaces in my research as well as in this presentation. So it struck me, especially in some of the examples, for example, the one at Nantes, where it's kind of the memorialization of a history or an idea, and that's one sense of meaning. And one would be the occupation of the square in Madrid, which is the creation of a very political meaning. And a different example would be the one in Barcelona, where you're preserving a physical memory or a physical object and reusing that space. And so what I would ask the students is, how do these different meanings intersect, and how is public space a forum for the expression of meaning and of culture?
Thanks very much. Rika Sherman, she's preparing a PhD at Duke University. Let me give the word now to Francesca Agelli.
Thanks a lot for your very stimulating presentation. Probably nothing of so innovative or new, but I would like to make a point that is the necessity to reconsider the relation between spaces and places in thinking of public places. And I would like to consider the two possible conceptual perspectives, and I would like to ask you to react, if it is possible, to this proposal. Spaces can be projected, they can be planned. In this sense, they embody the culture, the social thought, the technical expertise of designers, of architects, of urban planners who were involved. So they reflect their idea of what is public, their idea of the general interest, of what is good, of what is democratic, what is free or not free. In this sense, architects, designers are requested to define possible solutions to solve urban problems and to define functions of spaces. And in this context, places are as ready-made for people's uses. The public is passive here, is ideal, preconceived and passive. The other perspective would be to think of spaces as ways to do experience, as a world of experience. And if it is true, they are embedded into social practices, and in this sense they become places. So spaces are the product of social relations. They collect a plurality of social meanings and social issues, which can be really different. So in the first perspective, we focus on the art and craft of designers. No? In the second perspective, we focus on the art and crafts of humans, of the people ability and their different tactics of living spaces, of using spaces. No? So reinventing spaces and producing places. We call these tactics of appropriation of spaces. That is not the problem of property, no? But of the appropriation. In Italian we say appaesamento. Appaesamento is really a difficult word to translate. I think it's the creation of a public space as a common space based on common uses. But if it is true that places are a stratification of social uses of different meanings through the time, they can be very conflicting, because people can give different meanings and values to places, and this is a good reason to negotiate but also to be in conflict. I will end referring to Zimmel, when he said that space is a human activity. An artifact is a symbolical representation which express and explain the relationship among the humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Francesca is a professor at the UF University, especially dealing with public policy. Let's move now to the architecture field. I'll give the word to Enrico Anguillari.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. It was amazing from my point of view. Not only because the project presented are related with one of the physical materials of which the European city is made up, the public space, but also because allows us to think about the conceptual categories related to the contemporary city and to the project of the contemporary city. I think in this way because the contemporary city, from my point of view, is living in an atmosphere of much more pressure, no? Mainly linked to the regulation and privatization, as you said, and in which the collective body of the society is going to be dismantled. No? So I want to, I like to touch shortly one, 2 points. How to permit, for example, the cohabitation of different lifestyles, no? In a society where the differences are increasing and where the struggle to assert one or the other position is becoming more and more intense. For second, how to consider in a projectual way, as Francesca said, no? The right distance, no? Between people and activities, no? The right distance that are willing us to living together, no? In the town. And to conclude, how to deal with this concept in the physical project of the public space as an architect or urban designer.
Thank you, Enrico Angulari. He is teaching at the University of Camarino and also some courses in the UF University. Finally, we have our last guest professor in the zero row, Ruben Mayocco.
Yes, from Venice University. Yes, many compliments for the presentation, and I'd like to say only a short consideration. It's about the public space. It could be a chance that it's very interesting for me. That it's interesting because public spaces could be supporting changes. Democracy is not fixed. Democracy is the result of tension. So democracy is moving on for me. And I would be another consideration about 2 different levels of the project in the contemporary city. And the examples are the river banks of Ljubljana, where little interventions became a great event in itself. And in another different case, as camp in the Port of the Soul, great event could be a diffusive intervention from diffusive democracies. Just,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being short as well. Ruben Mayocco is teaching at the UF University as well, specifically focusing on how to activate in public spaces. We have a lot of work now for our speaker, for David, because all of the questions are really crucial and important. So I'm going to ask him a really quick answer, if possible, more than 5 minutes, because I think that it would be nice to finish at 3:30, I think. So this means that we still will have 15 minutes for all the students' questions. Specifically those students like having classes with Frances Munoz, which is good.
Okay, thank you for your questions. They are really very big questions and I cannot answer them here. Even if I had 3 hours, I couldn't. Okay, it's something to discuss more than something to answer. But I have some, I don't know, some hot spots for each one of you. to Luca, I would tell you that I have also tried to make this kind of list of points like accessibility, freedom of function, and the list does never end. So it's quite difficult to establish which are the terms by which we can define a place as a public space. And in that sense, I would confess you that our prize name is not only too long, but also it shows three big problems we have with it and with our conception of public space. We don't know what is Europe, where it begins, where it is going to, which are its physical limits. Is it the political Europe? Is it the economic Europe? Is it the north-south Europe or the east-west Europe? Okay, we don't know its limits. We don't even know what is urban today, that we can communicate with the new technologies without moving. We can buy and sell, even if we live in the middle of the sea. And we don't know what is public, effectively. It's something that is questioned very much. But there is some principles that remain. And there is something quite interesting, which is that what we are living today, we could call it a fight, a war between market and democracy. I think that these are the two things that are fighting today, market and democracy. And these two things, they are brother and sister. They were born in the same space, which is the square, the piazza, the forum, the agora. So they are sons of the city, and this battle must be solved in urban terms. I don't know how, but urban is the solution. About the construction of meaning, I would say that meaning is a collective construction. We all make meaning, and that makes that meaning is changing every day, and that's why, for example, that's why etymology exists. And when you see a fixed word, how it has changed along years, it's amazing. In the sense of these meanings, cities are facing now in Europe two different phenomena which are quite interesting, and it is shown among the works we have published in the prize website. These two phenomena are, one is that sometimes meaning is something bad, is something offensive. So in city we have sometimes things that bother us, that remains us, things that were dark, as for example the slavery in Nantes, or for example we have a quite interesting work which is the RDA Parliament in Berlin, which has replaced a building, the Palast, the Schloss Palast, the palace where emperors and kings of Prussia lived in Berlin. It was destroyed by the RDA authorities to build their own parliament. And when Germany got reunificated, they made the same, they are trying now to make the same mistake by destroying the new parliament and rebuilding the ancient Schloss Palace. So that's one of the phenomena. The other one is also offensive, but it's the opposite, which is that there are things that we have forgotten, and we have to get this information, these memories back. So that shows how complex is dealing with meaning. You know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and it's always changing. And it's called it war. To Francesca, the item about the difference between space and place is a marvelous item. We could talk about that for hours. I like very much this word, apaisamiento. I don't know if you translate that apropiación or something like this, but paisa that must come from
paese.
Paese, people, no? It was very, very beautiful. I would say that we all have the skill to convert spaces in places. The metro station where my girlfriend quit me, it's the same as all the other metro stations, but that one for me is a place, as no one other in the metro line. No? So we could say that a place is a space which is crossed by time somehow. But it's a space where something has happened, where something has occurred. And in that sense, we are, in our lives, we are every day converting spaces into places. And we do so also collectively. There are things that happen to all others, not as individual, but as society. So in city, we are overlapping every day many meanings, many places. It's true that space can be drawn, and places they must come, that they must occur. No? But I think that I'm optimistic in the sense that architects and engineers and people that work with shapes and with form, if they know that the city is not a finished shape, it's an open process, they can make things in such a way that provokes things happening and making spaces become places. Okay? And to Enrico, about what it was very interesting what he has said about European and contemporary city. I think that a big question to put on the table is, do we have still what we call European city, or we are losing it, we have lost it after the massification of car, for example. The other cities we are making, other cities we have done in the 20th century, can we call them European cities and the new cities? It's a good question to. But among all you have said, I think that there is a big question to put on the table, which is you have talked about dysregulation, and you have talked about what we call free market somehow. I would say that that what we have today is not such a free market. It's not free. I think we have abuse of power in the game of market, and it's concentrating power and wealth in a few hands. So I don't think it's a matter of dysregulation. I think that today we have a very strange system, and we are going to it more and more, which lays on two opposite things. On the one hand, it is very, very, very regulated. We have lots of ridiculous laws. We have a lot of norms in everyday life and public space. In Barcelona, it's an example of that. You cannot put a chair out of a line which is drawn on the pavement. So it's incredibly. But in the other hand, we don't have this sense of dissolving abuse of power. We have the phenomenon that public and state actions sometimes, too many times, are working for abuse of power more than to dissolve it. So that comes to the idea that, to continue with what you have said, that public space does not lay on the square, on the piazza, on the physical space of a piazza, in the same way as democracy does not lay in the parliament. They are something that occur, that make that sometimes parliament and piazza are places, but some other times they are void shapes or forms which don't contain these values. So they are values that at the end they are in our collective consciousness. And this is why sometimes democracy goes round the parliaments and tries to reconquer them, because we can understand sometimes that even if someone's called that democracy, other ones don't understand that as so. I don't know if I explained well.
Well, thank you very much, David. The questions were quite complex and interesting, and also the answers. So now we could have the temptation of continuing talking just on the same thing, but we didn't want just to solve any question. We wanted to open the questions, the relevant questions that this specific prize is posing on the table. So, despite the fact that experts on speeches, they say that after 20 minutes human brain is quite tired to be paying attention to the speakers, I think that we still have time, at least 8-10 minutes, to give the word to the students. So I would like to suggest, I'm afraid we don't have time to go one by one taking the questions, but I would just suggest the same formula. I would invite the students who have questions to suggest the question, and then I'm going to ask David the same effort to offer us a final comment summarizing his views on the students' ideas. So the students, they are very welcome now. The students and all the professors, of course, that are here with us, they are very welcome to suggest any question or idea or comment. Thank you very much. We can begin now. Sophia.
My question is the following. The most of the public places you showed in the presentation have a certain historic background which you need to really understand them as in their importance they have. And my doubt is the following. If I now see in the internet, for example, on the webpage of this prize, oh, there's this place in Barcelona which got the prize because it's so important. And then I go there as a non-Barcelonian, as a non-Spanish person, and this place is conquered then by a lot of foreign people, mostly tourists maybe. And my question now is, do these places then not get private again because they have a certain target group, which are maybe not the people living there and wanting to meet each other, having a place to have a conversation, but there's this target group which is attracted more by the signs there, how it's nicely, the history is so nicely presented there. So I want to ask if public place in this aspect doesn't get private place again.
Thank you very much. A very challenging point. I'm sure that we have other inspiring comments coming from the students. Yeah.
sometimes a public space seems to not like humans. Because in some public spaces, we can just, an example which every student here knows, Campo San Margarita, there is almost no possibility to sit down. There are 7 students and maybe 8 benches. So, does public space need to be human friendly or just good looking?
Third question. You have it. 3 is a lucky number, more than 2. So I will just suggest 1 more, and that's all. Yeah. Okay. If this is not the case, I think we have to. Last minute. Thank you very much. Last minute call.
I guess I'll go ahead and ask another question. But I'm very interested also in the balance between preservation and the creation of something new, because each of the projects addressed either a previous figure in the history of the site or a previous structure on the site, or were an intervention into an existing place. And so I'm interested in kind of the ideologies surrounding this balance between preservation and creation.
Thank you very much. Since Erika is preparing her PhD, so he could speak as a student as well. So thank you very much. Now we'll ask David very briefly to ask or make a comment on these 3 really interesting and challenging points.
Okay. I'll start with the last one because that reminds me something that I wanted to say before, which is that to transfer wealth from the past to the present is something good, but it has to be equilibrated with the needs of the present. Sometimes in our cities, and I think that Barcelona and Venice can be examples of that. There can be a mistake of museification, in the sense that the past becomes a tyranny that don't make the present able to find its own ways of expression, of living the present. So yes, in the tourism phenomena, sometimes cities are blocked in the past because they are selling a past which disables them to actually to be updated. To the first question, which was a wonderful question, very interesting, I say yes. This is a phenomenon which in physics is called, ayuda en francés, principio de incertidumbre.
Uncertainty principle.
¿Se digo así? Sí. De Heisenberg, which says that quantum particles cannot be observed because light disrupts them. So the observation of something makes this something change. And this happens so much in the city also by means of tourism, for example, but also by means of the public work. Every time we improve a part of the city, we are gentrificating it. If we open a metro station in a poor neighborhood, we are distributing a wealth. We are giving a wealth to a part of the city that had no transport. But at the next day, this place, apartments have higher values, so we are contributing to gentrification. This is a paradox of public action, which is solved in the sense that we must understand this redistribution of public action not as something which is done once, but something which has to be done every day as a constant revolution. Okay. I don't know if I answered this question, but finally the question about must public space be good looking or human friendly? Of course not, it must not be good looking. But also I would say that the answer is easy. I understand the question as not as a question mark, but as an alert of what we are doing many times in cities. But I would point that something that is not always in our minds, which is that concurrence is not always the way of assessing, of making an assessment about a public space. It's not only when a lot of people go to a public space when it is a public space, but it can be the opposite. We all need to have places to be calm, to be alone, and maybe the poor ones who have smaller houses don't have this chance in their homes, and that's why maybe it's good to have places which are empty. So that's the function of some parks and some green squares in Northern Europe. So concurrence, and that it's important to say also in cities like Venice or Barcelona, where it seems like concurrence is the way of measuring the success of a public space. Concurrence, they must be human friendly, but not concurrence is not the only way of measuring their value. Well, that's it.
That was excellent, David. Well, unfortunately we ran out of time, but as your chairman today, I'm obliged to say something else. So I promised 2 more minutes or 2 more minutes speech. 1 minute to thanking again the institutions and now also the people who have made possible this event. And yes, I would like to explain just a short story at the end of this session. So thank you anyway. Thank you again to the Biennale for hosting this event. Thank you to the Venice International University for organizing the event. Thank you to the UF for providing with such a challenging and inspiring professors in our zero role. Thank you to our professors and students. I would say when you organize these kind of events, you always know that there are people behind the event that make possible the event. So thank you very much to Christina, to Francesca, and to all our VIU staff that I understand they have been more involved with the organization of this event, always with a smile on the face and either with a nice line in an email, but both digitally and presentially ways of organizing things are welcome. And finally, the story. In 1961, Kevin Lynch, who is someone that some of the students in here, they know very well, he defined the city from the perspective of public spaces with only 5 words. He said, the city, or if you prefer, the public spaces in the city, they are the places in which we find interesting things found spontaneously. Interesting things we found in a spontaneous way in the city. This has to do with diversity, with the possibility for exchanging, with serendipity, with all different things David was suggesting in his speech before. And let me just finish the story with, we're talking about 1961, about something that can happen at any city at the moment. Let's imagine 3 different people with 3 different purposes, 3 different approaches to the city space. The first one is just going to buy a pair of shoes. The second one is leaving home to take his child to the school. And the third one is just, I don't know, something very different. He's going to ask for divorce. So we have 3 very different purposes, 3 very different interests in the city. If you have these public spaces, there is the possibility for something that, in my opinion, is what gives the importance and relevance to this prize. considering public spaces where the place in which you can change your opinion, you can change your mind. And this is wonderful because the one who was going to buy the shoes, he forgot and he changed his mind, and then he buys some oranges because you have a fruit shop on the way in a public space. And you see in Venice, in all these fruit market on the fruit. The one who was just taking the child to the school, he remembered that he or her or she didn't does not have oranges. So he buy the oranges that were not, or the shoes for the children. And finally, and this is not, let me just say, I don't have anything against someone divorced or asking for divorce, but maybe someone asking for divorce can think twice. This is what public space, in my opinion, and I think that it could be one of the conclusions of today, offers to us the possibility to change our statements, to change our minds, and in my opinion, this is the best common ground we can expect for cities. So thank you very much. See you soon in public spaces, either in Venice, either in another way. Thank you very much.